Bonjour tout le monde. Ouais, c'était sympa les petits talks de ce matin là. Du coup, on va pouvoir enchaîner. First question: who is strictly speaking in English and nothing else? Okay. I will do it in English. Thank you guys. No, 3 French guys just raised their hands. I will do it in English. I didn't try to translate my talk in English. I have the slide in English. So if I'm not very precise, I will switch quickly in French. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Let's do it. So, welcome everybody. We'll speak today about security and how to find the leaks on your application. About me quickly, I'm Eyal. I'm a principal engineer at Samsung B2B. So I speak a lot with IT managers and how to integrate Android on the company, on the corporate environment. And I'm also part of the Paris Android user group. So we just had a big plan to organize it with WIP. And yeah, I'm also an Android Google developer expert with Cyril, just on the room. That's a specific problem at Google to help guys that want to provide content. Yeah, that's done. Okay, so let's start talking about that. The security. Basically, we used to talk about security on Android talks for the customer side, for the random customer. And today, because I'm starting the company track, the corporate track on the DroidCon, I would like to speak about security. Of course, you will have a customer side question and start answers, but also to bring somehow a little bit of corporate needs from an application, because that's different. That's not the same services, that's not the same constraint. First question, who is an Android developer? Who develop every single day with Android? Okay. Who's developing? That's not the same question than before. Application for corporate, for guys that work with. Okay, so that should be interesting. Yeah, and something that is very important, that data is more important for a company than the goods of the company. That's really important for them. A lot of companies are using many solutions to encrypt the data, and because they don't want to leak, because information is really important. More important than the thing that they buy. Yeah, so on this presentation, I will point out different problematics on the Android application and try to find beginning of solution and just things to let you think about to find the leaks and be able to do security, des applications sécurité. Sorry, yeah, you know, we don't slept a lot yesterday, and I'm quite tired, so that's more hard for me. Sorry. Okay, so what is the leak? A leak is when somebody access to an information that is not allowed to get. Okay? In Android, basically you have 3 main ways to access this information. The first is when you export, when you expose a component of your application. Somebody can access to the component and get data or action. Okay? You can store information on the device, and these files, this data can be accessed by somebody that wants to leak an information. And the other one is the log, because we put a lot of things in the log, so we have to take care about that. Okay, so what we have on when we think about component on an application, we can think about 4 things: activities, services, receivers, and content provider. Something is very important for you, because you all know that we declare all these components on a manifest, and when it's on this manifest, it can be accessible. First, if you put an intent filter, like you do on your main activity, for example, it's by default exported. So an application can call it. If you don't want a service or a receiver or anything to be accessible, by another component, another application, you don't have to export it. And something very important for you too: content provider by default is exported. So if it's exported, it can be a backdoor from somebody outside of your application. What is the solution? If your component don't have to be accessed by somebody, by a third party, you don't have to export it. That's really simple. On a manifest, exported equal false, and that's done. So that's the first thing very important here. Yeah, something that is more on the customer side, because they want to. Many applications bring content because they are linked to other services. We can talk about Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus, for example. They can give the access to information that you put on this service. That's for the customer side, and that's the same for the company. When you have your application linked to the Active Directory, for example, of your company, you always have to think about your legitimacy to share your data. Always. That's the behavior very important that you have to get. Okay, so sometimes you're obliged to share content among applications. When you do that, that's very important to think about how to limit, because it's exported, okay. But the first thing to do is how to limit the access to the data. It's handled very on the low level side on Android, and it's very easy to use. That's a permission. You can declare your own permission. In fact, you use it in every application when you need internet, when you need to store data on the external, on the SD card or anything. You use permission, but you can create it if you have content to share. When you create it, there is 3 levels that you can use on your application. Another one, the last one, which is not used on the third application, so I won't talk about that. I will talk about only the 3. When you declare your permission, you have to declare the level of this permission. That will let you say how it's dangerous to use this permission. The first level is normal. That's a very simple information that you can share easily. Dangerous, declare a dangerous. So something that can be hard for the user if the data arrive on somebody that don't want good thing for you. Okay. And the last one is very interesting. Is the signature. The signature allows you, in fact, to share data, to enter to an intent, only when the application gets the same signature. So, in fact, sorry. I told you, very tight today. That allows you to share intent and content between applications only when you created the box. Because the signature, that's the signature of the author, of the developer. So when you use signature, you know that only your applications can share content with them, and not with other applications. So you can keep developing several applications. When it's done easily to declare permission, that's only manifest, like everything you declare on an app. You have to declare the name, so you know that. the label, the description, the icon. That's used when the user installs the application. The package manager shows, or the Play Store, that depends on your on the way you install your application. That just shows the information of the to the user, so you can be aware about what the sync is doing. And the other thing, that's the protection label. Okay, and the very easy thing that you do is if you want a service to be exported but protected by a permission, you have the Android column permission attribute. You declare it on the XML tag, and that's done. Okay, so that's a good thing, but sometimes, you know, on some hackers will try to find application that already get the permissions to let them act for them. For example, I have an application A that asks to an application B to ask information to the information C, to application C. The application C get the sensitive data. The application B get the permission. So B can ask to C. But the hacker application, the application A, don't get the permission. If they find on the application B, because it's easy, we will see just quickly after, it's easy to see what is inside an application, you will know that he gets the permission and he can ask to him. So the permission B have absolutely to check if the caller, the intent caller, get the same permission. You can do it very easily using the context. So when you receive an intent and before asking to him, if you know that the action that you are doing is sensitive, check the permission of the guy who's calling you. That's very easily, one single line of code, then you test it, and you're done. You don't have, you're not the weakest link. Okay, so that's done for the permission, how to close your doors inside your application. There is another thing to know. It's an application get a life cycle. Depending on the state, your component can be useful or not. I can give you an example. On the Exchange email application on AOSP, for example, before logging for the first time on the application, so to synchronize your application with a service, Exchange server, for example, or anything, the activity that compose a mail is not useful, really not useful. The thing is, when you have this kind of use case, you have by default to disable the component, so it can be accessible by anybody. And then, on the login process, when you know that now your application is ready to compose message, because there is a mail behind the application, you can enable it. So that's something that you have to think about too. That's really depend on any case. That's really the purpose of this presentation, is really think about all these points, you know, what is the solution for you. And that's all about the security. So how I do it, that's very easily too. An activity, I declare it as enable equal false. That's done, and I want to, and when I want, and my application, when I want to activate it, just shoot a simple line of code using the package manager, the set component enable setting on your login process, or the process that made that your application is ready for these components, activities, services, or anything. Okay, so your components are ready. Now you want to store information. The thing I will tell you are very simple. Really, don't mess with the data. That's really important. You know that Android is using the Linux right to get access to information. If you want to store private information, you can do it on three different ways. you can open a file that will open a, you can open a file on the private folders of your application, and you have also to use the mod private tag, the flag that allows you to just ask to make this file be readable, only by you, and not a raw readable file. So you can also open a shared preference the same way, and doing that for databases. Something you have to know: everything that you put on the SD card is raw readable. That's really important. So another thing, and the last thing for this part of the presentation, that's the log cap. As I told you, many, that's very useful for us to put information on the log cap. We do it a lot when you debug an application. And on many cases, that can be source of leaks, and huge leaks, really. Because the things that you show on the log cap are now encrypted, they are very explicit, because you need it. So you have to, you really have to. And sometimes you forget, because the Q&A is not enough good, you don't have the time, you have to release quickly, you forget things. If you don't have unit tests that manage these kind of tests, you can be very bad at that. But a very simple thing to know, if you can use a value on the build config point debug, that's a value that shows you if you are on debug or not at the compile time. That's changed by the compiler. Basically, that should be changed by the compiler. And then, so what I done on this example, I get this information, I attribute it to show. That's a variable that I can access everywhere. And before logging, I just test it. That's very simple. But when that is done, it should be very easy to you to not think about that for another time, and you should be and you should leak information on the log when it's done. Another thing is you should really, in fact, because that's not enough. That should be that should be so good, you know, to have something so easy. But for example, one build of the ADT, of the SDK, made something wrong. And in fact, the build config.debug stayed on true even when you compile it for release. Yeah, I saw somebody doing like that. Yeah. You know, that's sometimes hard. So you have to check it. And you can do it very easily on your Q&A. I don't know, maybe a message that you send on the logcat that can be parsed very easily to test if this variable is still on a good state for you. Yeah, so that was not in fact the end of this part, because I have another point that can be very tricky at some point. It's usually in Android, when we wanted to have an application that is able to be debuggable, we had to put a flag on the manifest. So I've seen people keep using this and declare it is this explicitly on the manifest. That should not be done now, because I don't remember the version of ADT we are, but I don't. Somebody get the information. What is the version of the current version of the ADT?
22. 21.
Okay. You see, from the 8th one, that's already done by the Eclipse plugin. So now you don't have to take care about the debuggable. And why I told you about that, it can imply a lot of big problem for you. So here's a sample with something that you can do very easily, but when an application is declared as debuggable, inside Android you have a run as binary. When you run the run as with the package of your application, you can switch your user as a simple user to the user of your application, and then have the same right. With that example, I extract databases from a chat application with all the private conversation of people. So that's something you have to know. There's for example, in this example that's very simple. I realize this example. I get the ID. So now I have the ID of the application, and then I can go to the private folder of the application very easily. Everybody knows the route to go there. So that's done. Okay, that's something you should know also. Is there is a bug on the run as application, and on devices that have many applications, run as is not working because there is a bug, and that's a buffer problem because every application are declared on a single file, and when this file is more than I don't remember, maybe 5 mega. No, that's not 5 mega, but when it's up to a certain space on the memory, run is not working. So that's a problem solved for many devices. Okay, so we talk about security on your app, but as you know, your app is not alone, and your device is not alone, and your user is not alone on the world. Two things that I want to talk about on the other part when we go outside of the application is take care about the network and try to handle cases when the user lost the device. I don't remember, maybe Julien, es-tu là? Julien Del Rio. It's not here. Okay. I will scream. 1 year ago on Google Plus, Julien shared a link of an application he found on the Play Store. This application was a very simple application that makes your phone declared as a free Wi-Fi access. You know this service. It's very famous in France. I think there's a lot of things like that everywhere. So you were able to do phishing very easily. You take your phone, you activate the tethering, and then this application was showing a free that's the internet provider in France formula, and then you have to authenticate with this. That's a very simple example of a man in the middle. This application, at this stage, they can, of course, store your free Wi-Fi access, logins, but this application were also able, at this moment, application. So, what is the best way today to fight the man in the middle? 8 minutes, finish? Okay. I don't know, maybe. That's it. There is something very important for you, is to use HTTPS when you want to share information over the network and to encrypt your information. And but that's very good, but that's not enough, because in many cases, you know, if you want to do HTTPS, you have to use a certificate. This certificate can cost money, and sometimes companies don't want to cost money. So the solution is to generate your certificate and then to override the trust manager. But many times, and in fact, a study showed that 15% of the people that in fact they don't know, I don't remember the name of the application, and they test they test a man in the middle process on this application using a non-trusted certificate, a certificate that they generate themselves. So they can do man in the middle even if it's HTTPS. Why? Because in fact this application override the trust manager and in fact don't test anything about the trust that they can have in the certificate that is generated. I hope the things are clear, but this is a very bad situation where you don't when you do HTTPS and you don't check that the certificate that is used is you can trust this certificate, don't do HTTPS. That's exactly the same, really, because that's really easy to go around. You have two solutions to in fact implement it well. You can trust the trust manager of your of the Android. So, and sometimes that's very annoying on the debug on the pre-production phases, because you have this exception that pops, and so you can do HTTPS because your debug certificate is not working. So many people are tempted to bypass the trust manager. So first, you have to use a trusted certificate. Of the other solution, you can generate your own and check if the certificate is really your own. With that, it's in fact better, because I talked about one guy in the room yesterday. He told me that it has been audited by a security expert on his application. And in fact, they rebuild Android, they override the trust manager, in fact they remove it, and to test if the application was, because if I run my own Android, I can change the trust manager, and I'm my own trust manager with my certificate that I use for the man in the middle. I hope that you see the situation. In this situation, my application, even if I use the default trust manager of Android, there is a real problem on it. So the better thing to do is in fact use your own certificate and override the trust manager and check your own certificate. So everything is on your own now. Another thing that you can try to think about is encrypt your data. Okay, use third-party libraries to do that, because that's a very, very, very specific thing. So don't try to do it if you are not somebody specialized in it and really know it very well. And there is a very, very nice blog post on how to manage, because the problem when you are using encryption is the key, in fact. Because if you have the key, there is no encryption. If the hacker has the key, there is no encryption. It's like for HTTPS, if you don't check the certificate. So there is three things that you can do. I will give it to you very quickly, and I put the link on the Android developer blog that you maybe already read. If you want to use encryption for the key, you have to use the tree random. You can grab a key from your server or ask for a passphrase from your user, because if the user uses a passphrase on his own passphrase, you don't know it in fact, but you just can have it, transform it to a key, and then encrypt or decrypt your data. There are still limits on the encryption. When the information is on the RAM of the telephone, if the hacker accesses the RAM, of course it gets the decrypted data. Another thing, and the last thing, I think, no, in fact. And the last thing, when you are developing an application for a company, you can try to think about being a device administrator of the device. How is it powerful? It will allow you to ask for a password on the device. You can ask for an encryption of the device too. You can disable things, so manage the hardware. And you can also act when the device has been stolen to ask for a wipe or a lock, for example. So you can think about that too. And another thing also, your application is always variable. Every application can be extracted, every application can be extracted, and then can be reverse engineered. The problem behind that, if it's reverse engineered, there were a very nice presentation of the demo that, yeah, Sylvain, you can raise your hand. He's very happy when I think about it. So he showed to everybody how to get an application and how to read the code inside. If you read the code inside, you can, for example, if you have an API key or a key or an encryption key, you can read it and use it on your own and decrypt the data. So you have to take care about that, and there is 4 things, but one is very, very important. It's to use program to upgrade the code of your application. That's very simple. There are 3 other things. We record the session on Silicon. If you want to dig on this kind of subject, you should just check this conference, and it will show you all the problems you have on this subject. Okay, so we just finished about the security part that I want to talk about. There is 2 more things that I will think about, that I will tell you. When we develop, we are not only developers, we are not only users, but there is people with money, and that's a big problem. The money is the problem. Because this is a curve that has been written that shows how the effectiveness of the application as for investment. And as you see, that's a logarithm curve. So, on many cases, applications stop to affordable because that's the amount of money that the company tells we will put on. But sometimes you need more money. You really need more money. Not money to add security, but maybe to improve the user experience. Maybe to do the thing easier. You need money because you need time. So that's something you should know, and that's something you have to take care about when you are a developer, because you know the platform, you know what are the security constraints, what are the real problems you have on your on the platform, and the thing you have to handle, so you know the time you will need to implement it. That's something I wanted to talk about. And just to finish, and because it's really important, and everybody know that. I told you, in this presentation, I don't think you will learn a lot of things. But that's things that you have to think about. And the last thing you have to think about, and in fact that have to be also the first thing, is to never forget the user. Never, really important. Because if you forget the user, you forget the service that you are working on, you forget the people that will use your service every day, and there is 2 ends of the story. First, the user will try to find a workaround to work around your security process, or it will just don't use the application. And I've seen that. I've seen that not many, but I've seen some applications that have been developed, some services that have been developed in the company. They were so awful just because the IT manager saw that we want to do something very secure. That was just not useful. That was not usable because they forgot about the user. So that's really important, and that's your responsibility as a developer, because you know the platform, you know how it will be used. Okay, so I finished the presentation. This is the reference that I used to create that. Everything is linked, so you will be able to work. I just have to finish with 2 things about advertising Samsung, because of course we have to. Now something that could be interesting for you. That's the Samsung Startup Challenge. That's challenge of developing applications that have to run on S4 and that have to use Core SDK. Core SDK, it's an SDK that allows you to do instant sharing information between applications. You just connect it to Wi-Fi direct Wi-Fi, and then you can have several applications that share information instantly. There is a prize money of $800,000 and 10 winners. If you want more information about the challenge, you have the link just on the bottom of the slide. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about that's very, very quick, it's about the tools that Samsung provides to developers. For SDKs, very, very quick codes. I told you to share content instantly. The Bluetooth Low Energy that you can use on the S4. Okay, now it's an external SDK because it's not handled by Android. The S Pen and the multi-window SDK, so you will be able to do multi-windowing application, and the all-share framework if you want to share content files. That's very easy. And the last thing is the remote test lab. If you don't have the money to buy an S4 or something, there is devices that are reserved on the lab that we have at Samsung, and you can access directly and reserve for an amount of time to be able to push your application and to test it as you get it on the end. Of course, that's on the web, so that's not perfect, but that's free and that's very easy to do. Really, I tried it, even if I have many devices on my desktop. Okay, so I finished. Thank you. You have the link on the slide, the slides link if you want to get it. There is the comments in French and the bullet points in English that I done just during the last minute. Do you have questions? One question?
Yeah. Do you have any comments on how to deal with man in the browser attack? With the man in the browser attack?
Man in the browser?
Yeah.
Okay, there is something just because I know that I was short on time. Is the thing I wanted, the simple phrase about the browser, using a browser and an application, is try to don't break the web vulnerabilities on an Android application. That's the only thing I can talk about. That's the only thing I can tell you. In fact, the web has its own vulnerabilities. So if you use the web on a browser on your application, you have the same problem that you have on your navigator. And a very simple thing is be very careful when you link your native code to the JavaScript code. Other questions?
Est-ce qu'il y a des techniques pour vérifier qu'une application qui utilise des web services est bien l'application que j'ai mise sur le store?
The question is there some solutions to check that my application, my own application, is the only one that can get the information on my web service? The answer is you have several. The first could be the authentication. If you put a process, Twitter, for example, and many services use API keys because that allows you to manage the developer. If the developer don't have the API key, he's not able to access your web service. And there is many ways, in fact.
You can use mutual authentication, double-way SSL authentication. So the server authenticates the app and the app authenticates the server. You can add the token.
Yeah, the other answer is to use mutual authentication. So there is many ways. Somebody talked about the PKIs, PKIs. I don't know how to say it in English. Philippe done a conference yesterday about PKIs. And it's how to use a file that you create for a single user that allows this user to be authenticated to your web service because of this file. So every user should have his own file. There is many ways. That's really depends on what the architecture you want to do and etc. Is there other question? So I think that's how to take the coffee. Thank you guys.